Alright, don't click away, because what I'm about to tell you is genuinely crazy. There's an AI model right now that US regulators don't want you to know about. It's outperforming American models in multiple benchmarks. It's 5 times cheaper than Claude. And it was built by a company that the US government banned from buying the exact chips everyone said were necessary to build frontier AI. 3 weeks ago, a Chinese company released GLM-5, a model trained on 100% domestic chips with zero American technology. And it's not just good, it's competing with OpenAI and Anthropic head-to-head. When the news broke, their stock went up 34% in a single trading day. Chinese state media called it a technological breakthrough. And American AI companies went completely silent. Here's what nobody's saying out loud. If China can build frontier AI without our chips, without our infrastructure, and make it cheaper and open source, what exactly is our advantage now? So here's what we're covering. First, the tech, why the benchmarks are blowing people's minds. Then, the geopolitics, because this is about power, not just chatbots. And finally, what this means for you. Stick around to the end because there's a twist nobody's talking about yet. So let's start with the basics. On February 11th, a Chinese company called Zhipu AI released GLM-5. We're talking 744 billion parameters using a mixture of experts' architecture, which means only 40 billion parameters are active at any time. Think of it like having a massive team of specialists, but you only bring in the exact experts you need for each task. And the results? Insane. GLM-5 scored 77.8% on SWE Bench Verified, which tests if an AI can fix real bugs in actual code. That's higher than Google's Gemini, higher than GPT 4.5, and only 3 points behind Claude Opus 4.5, which costs way more to use. They also crushed math problems, 92.7% on competition-level questions, and they achieved a record-low hallucination rate. But here's where things get wild. The entire model was trained on Chinese chips. Huawei Ascend chips. No NVIDIA. No American hardware whatsoever. Since January 2025, Zhipu AI has been on the US Entity List. They're banned from buying high-end NVIDIA chips, the H100s and H200s that basically every other AI company depends on. Most people thought this would cripple Chinese AI development. Instead, they just proved they don't need American chips at all. This is a geopolitical earthquake. Now let's talk money, because this is where it gets really interesting. GLM-5's API pricing is $1 per $1 million input tokens. Claude Opus charges $5 per $1 million. That's 5 times cheaper for comparable performance. And it's open source under an MIT license, which means developers can use it commercially without paying licensing fees. When this was announced, their stock jumped 34% in one day. But there's a catch nobody's talking about. While GLM-5 is technically open source, running it yourself isn't cheap. You need massive GPU clusters. For most developers, the local deployment cost is actually higher than just using the API. So yeah, it's accessible. If you're a big company. For the average developer, you're still paying someone to run it for you. And some early testers noticed it's really good at completing tasks, but it might not understand the bigger picture the way Claude does. It's like having an employee who's super efficient but doesn't always ask if what they're doing actually makes sense. Here's the real talk. GLM-5 is impressive, but it's not perfect. It's text only. No images, no multimodal capabilities. It's focused on coding and agentic tasks. But for the price and performance, it's a game changer. Let's zoom out. What we're watching here is the decentralization of AI power. For years, cutting-edge AI has been dominated by American companies. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. They had the chips, the data, the infrastructure. GLM-5 just proved that model is over. China now has a fully domestic AI stack that can compete at the frontier level. And they're making it open source. This isn't just China versus America. This is about what happens when AI development becomes multipolar. More competition, lower prices, but also more complexity around regulation and security. So what should you do? If you're a developer, GLM-5 is worth testing, especially for coding automation. The API pricing alone makes it competitive, If you're a business owner, this is a wake-up call. AI costs are dropping, and you now have real alternatives to the big Western providers. And if you just care about tech, pay attention. Because if one Chinese company can do this, imagine what happens when 5 more follow suit. Oh, and one more thing. GLM-5 supports a 200,000 token context window, longer than GPT-4. That means it can handle entire code bases in a single conversation. But the question is, will Western regulators allow it in their markets? That's the billion-dollar question nobody has answered yet. Drop a comment. Would you use a Chinese AI model if it's better and cheaper? Or does the geopolitics matter more? If this was helpful, smash that like button and subscribe because AI is moving fast, and I'm breaking down everything you need to know. See you in the next one.